Hello and welcome to a Cyclomentary. Cyclomentary, a documentary about cycling, simple as that. I am going to put together a short film, I hope, that tracks the progress that I make on a ride that I'm planning to do 2017. That ride is the Dragon Ride, the Dragon Devil route. It's 190 miles, 305 kilometers. We're at about 4,500 meters of climbing, 1,400 feet for those of you in old money. That happens exactly 6 months today. So that's why I'm standing in my garage on the 11th of December 2016 talking to you about it. So what I'd like to do is track the training, what I'm eating, how much weight I'm losing, how fit, hopefully, that I'm getting, and everything else in between. My steeds are here, but they are of course covered up for the winter, and that's exactly where they're going to remain for the next few weeks. Training starts officially on the 1st of January or any day thereafter that I can get out, weather permitting. Winter trainer, summer bike, all will be revealed in due course. Okay, so today is the first day of training, 2nd of January 2017. I would have made it the 1st of January 2017, but unfortunately yesterday was a bit of a washout. It started raining during the middle of the night, didn't stop all day, and when it did stop it was a lot of surface water on the road. I knew there was a contingency day today. The weather's actually really nice today. Blue skies, dry, chilly, and it's looking good. Looking forward to it. Well, so there you are. That's the first one out of the way. A bit more of an effort than I thought it was going to be, I must admit. Probably a little further than I thought. It was about 26, 27 miles, I think, in the end, and I think I just clocked 1,700 feet coming down the road there, so a lot more climbing than I was hoping for. I joined up with somebody today who was a little bit fitter at this time of year than I am, and he had no problem getting up the hills, but it was a bit of an issue for me. But there you go, that's that one out of the way. Got a good sweat on today, which is incredible considering it was about 3 or 4 degrees for most of the ride today. But you know, you don't feel it. You're going up the hills, you're sweating, and of course you're losing weight. And yesterday morning I weighed myself at the start of this event, and this is what happened. And so 14 stone 3.5. It's around about where I would want to be, but when you consider I actually want to be 12 stone 12 in the 2nd week of June, that's a lot of weight that I've got to lose. Around about 19.5 pounds if my maths is right, which when you think about it is around 9 bags of sugar. So can you imagine cycling around with a rucksack on your back with about 9 bags of sugar on it? It makes it that much harder. So of course you lose that weight, becomes a lot easier. Never mind the gear you've got on, the bike you're riding, etc, etc. If you lose some weight, it's going to make it easier. So that's my theory.
So it's now a month later, and I thought I'd share some numbers with you. This is what I did during January. 159.3 miles, climbing elevation gain of just short of 10,000 feet, 9,977 to be precise, and I lost 3.25 pounds, which I'm quite pleased about. I'll come back to you in a minute and talk about weight. But what I thought I would do as well is share a typical winter's ride, if you like. This is one of the lanes that leads out of the west of Cardiff out towards Peterson Super Ely, and then eventually Cowbridge if you keep going. And as you can see, it's a sort of a typical winter's day. It's quite a nice day. It looks quite a nice day, but it has been raining, and we did have a bit of rain on this ride, and you can see the roads themselves are a little wet and a little slippery, treacherous. A lot of grit on the road, a lot of sticks, twigs, etc. on the in the lanes. It meant you need to be really careful. And of course, winter training itself is never easy. It's I'm using my bigger bike, for example, my heavier alloy bike. I've got all the gear on, and I think one of the things that does make things easier over time is that weight loss. And for me, the theory of weight loss is fairly easy. It's simple as eating less, doing more exercise, and theoretically the weight should drop off. And I guess that as January has gone past, I've kind of proved that to a certain extent that has happened. And then the other thing that I use as well, and a motivational tool, if you like, is a training plan. And in that training plan, I set out the rides that I'd like to do, the weights that I would like to lose, the elevation gain, etc., that I'd like to make for a particular week, month, ride, etc. And this is I put it into a spreadsheet, and it looks like this. So I split it into weeks, individual days. In fact, as you can see, the majority of this is just over the weekend that I'm riding, because of course it's a little bit dark during the winter nights, so I don't usually go out in the winter nights. I've got all my rides on there. That column on the right is the important one, the amount of weight that I'm losing. The red section is where I've failed to meet target. The greens are where I've hit it, and it's all on target for the moment. So back to the ride, and this is the main A road, the A48 between Bridgend and Cardiff. As you can see, I'm picking up a bit of speed on this particular section. I decided to go out against the wind and come back with it, and that's something that I usually do. On this particular day, the wind was blowing up quite a lot, and it's actually blowing me back into Cardiff. I'm getting back at a good speed. As you can see as well, that the sun's up at the moment. It's drying the road out here on the main road, and it's quite a nice road at this quite a nice ride, I should say, at this particular point. It's going well. Of course, once you get back into the lanes, as you can see, the problem with the sun is, of course, it doesn't get up high enough to come over the hedgerows and actually dry that road out. So it is a little tricky, and you have got to be careful. There was a couple of incidents where I needed to be really careful on this ride, and it was a little bit slippery. This is coming up towards Craiger, I think. There's plenty of hills on this ride. It's coming towards the end of the day, and this is me just heading for home. Now, we've already had a look at January's numbers. Let's have a look at what we've got for February. The total miles was 285, just over. Against, you'll remember, January was 159, I think. And an elevation gain of 16,748 against January's, I think, just under 10,000. So a good month in February, despite it being a shorter month. And a total mileage for the winter training up until the 17th of March, which is when I took a break, of 634.7 miles, nearly 635, and an elevation gain of over 37,000. So one of the things that goes hand in hand with the miles that you put in and the climbing that you're doing is, of course, weight loss, and I've spoken about this a little bit in the past. And up to the 17th of March 2017, I managed to lose 9.5 pounds. So you can see there I'm weighing in at 13 stone 7.5, whereas I was previously 14 stone 3 at the turn of the year. So you can actually see the weight loss from the plan that I've put together that I showed earlier. This is the plan up to the point where I took a break at the end of the winter. It was an unscheduled break. It was a holiday that I'd booked. I wouldn't normally put a break like that in the middle of a training plan, but it was booked a long time ago, so that's just the way it played out. The weight at the beginning of the year, in the first week of January here, 14 stone 4 is what I wanted my starting point to be, and it actually ended up being 14 stone 3.5. So you saw at the beginning of the video there, and you can actually track it week on week, and you can see where I'm at. Green being the area where I've hit target, and red are the weeks where I've missed target. This week at the beginning of February, for example, my target 14 stone exactly. I weighed in at 14 stone 2, but in the other weeks successfully hitting my target right up until the very end here, where my target on the 18th, 19th March was to be 13 stone 7. I actually ended up being 13 stone 7.5, so I'm not going to worry about half a pound. So it's a good weight loss. It's 10 pounds in around, I don't know, 10, 12 weeks maybe, so it was good going. And of course all this is done through diet and of course exercise, and when it came to the miles, I've shown you already how many miles I was cycling during January, February, etc. And here's the weekly breakdown, and you can see that this week, for example, the second week, January, my target was only 35 miles, managed 61, target of 2,000 feet to climb, and achieved 3,800 odd. And then there are two further columns which give you the figures for the cumulative miles and the cumulative elevation. So and you can see the green represents where I'm hitting target, and this is where I've fallen back a little bit, and I've fallen back that particular week as well. So if we bring it forward to the point where I actually stopped for this holiday, again I'm well ahead on the cumulative miles and climbing, and just behind on the weight, and I'm actually putting some miles in at this stage. This particular week, for example, 94.8 miles, and also 5,650 feet. So you know, the figures are obviously differing as the weather gets better. So at that point I took a holiday, and when I came back it was much better. The weather had improved, and I'm looking to show you some footage now of the kind of rides that I did when I came back, and also how the weather had improved, and how much difference there was in riding in the winter to when the spring started at the beginning of April for me. So that's winter's training done. That's a wrap. Coming forward a couple of weeks now into spring training, and you can see that the weather certainly changed. This is a ride I did down to Ogmore. It's another 60-mile ride, so obviously the training is getting longer. This particular one was an 80-mile ride just a week or two later. Still in early April though, and this is, you can see that there's not a cloud in the sky here. This is a beautiful ride. It's quite warm for the time of year as well. It's quite important that I'm getting in these climbs, because this particular one, this forms part of it's actually the first major climb in the Dragon Devil ride that I do. Comes after about 15 miles or so, and it's a really nice climb, and you can see that it gives you that view back down the valley from where you've come from. And again, just to reiterate the fact that the weather certainly has got better, and it just makes training that much more pleasurable. The second climb on the ride is the Regos Mountain. It's a very similar kind of a ride to the Bulk, whereas you get about 4 miles of 6% or so, so it's not particularly steep, but it does drag on, and it kind of saps your energy, and it tests your stamina. The one good thing you do get about this particular climb is that you get those lovely views of the Brecon Beacons over there to the left, which gives you a hint of where you'll actually be going, because the next climb of the actual ride is over in those mountains through there to the left. So after the first feed station at Penderyn, you go across the Penderyn Moor. It takes you up to the A470 near Storey Arms, just south of Brecon. and it's pretty up and down, but mainly up. It takes you from about 750 feet at the feed station to about 1500 feet at its highest point, but this is over a 7-mile period, and so really the percentage gradient is only about 1 or 2%, but it does drag on, and on a day where you've got the wind in your face, it can be quite energy sapping. The next major climb, and this is one of the steeper ones, is the Devil's Elbow. This is near Senny Bridge, just south of Senny Bridge. Comes at about 55 miles or so, I think, into the ride. And this particular section, the very bottom section, ramps up to around about 13%. It really doesn't look it. It looks deceptive, but I think it's because it's actually riding alongside the mountain rather than over the top of it, that it gives that impression that it's not at all steep. And from here, where I'm riding at this point until the first switchback left, it really is deceptive, somewhere between 10 and, as I say, 13% at its steepest, just as you're approaching this particular point here, the first switchback to the left. And you can actually see it does look as if it is getting steeper. This is the middle section, so you've come round to the left after the hairpin, and this particular section goes on for a few hundred yards, touches 15-16% and stays there pretty much most of this particular section. And so by the time you get up to the next switchback, which is to the right, as you can see, your energy levels are dropping, and you're hoping to get it finished. On this occasion, this particular training ride, I decided to take the easy option. There was no way I was going across that steep bit in the middle there. Probably would have come to a complete halt, fallen off. So I go slowly around the outside, try and get some air back in my lungs for this final push to the top. And this is me just coming right to the top here. This is about 8%, dropping to 5 or so just at the top there by the gate, and that's you done. So it takes you, this one, from about 900 feet at the bottom through to about 1500 feet at the top. So it's a 600-foot climb, but it's over a very, very short period, and the average gradient is pretty big, double figures. To get to the hardest climb on the ride, the Devil's Staircase, you come through this lovely valley. This is up in mid-Wales. Absolutely beautiful scenery. It's not even a nice day, as you can see when I shot this, but it really is a really lovely, picturesque scene. And I'm hoping that on the actual day itself, it's a nice sunny day and we get some good views. As you can see, there's some nice descending to be done before the actual climb. That sign really did say 25%, and if you think it's scary, you'll be right, because this is pretty scary as you come through the trees here. Seems to be a nice gentle beginning. Goes up very slowly, but when, as you can see, the road heads off to the left there as you go around this left bend, and you actually come to realise that the 25% sign wasn't lying. It really is a 25% climb that you've got to do, and it goes on at 25% for some time too. I think this particular climb is 1.3 kilometres, just under a mile, about 7/8 of a mile or so, and the average gradient is around 14%, I think, over that time. So it really is a killer, and it comes after about 120 miles, so you would imagine that the legs will be pretty much gone by then, so I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get up there. And then the final major climb on the ride is here at the Black Mountain. This is me going over the top of the Black Mountain on the same day as I filmed the Devil's Staircase. It's a 6-mile climb or so. The first 2 miles are just 3 or 4%, if that, and then the last 4 miles it does get a bit steeper. It goes up to an average gradient of 6%, touches 10, 11 in places, but also gives you a bit of a break as well. And it's a real drag rather than a difficult climb. On this particular day, we were very lucky. We had a tailwind taking us up this particular section, but once we got to the top and bent round to the left and then headed over the top of the mountain, we were into a headwind, which is really tricky. It's just over 2 weeks to the big event. You'll remember I was stood in my garage on the 11th of December last year telling you about the ride that I was going to do later this year. The time is almost upon us. I just wanted to put some perspective on the actual ride itself. As I said at the time, 190 miles in one day, multiple categorized climbs on the day, perhaps 15,500 feet of elevation climbing on that one day. It's no mean feat, and at the moment, with time getting closer and closer, I'm getting a little bit more and more nervous as the day actually approaches. How is training going? It's as you've seen, there's been some really nice rides. What I've shown in the footage is a lot of stamina type rides, long kind of rides. I've done 3, 4, maybe 5 100-mile rides. But what I've done lately, just recently, is that I've put together some kind of interval training where I'm going out very briefly in the evenings, for example, just doing an hour here, hour and a half there, just throwing out as much power as I can on just brief interval rides. So perhaps a short sharp hill, a minute and a half, 2 minutes, just burning out that power. And that's how it's gone pretty well, to be honest with you. The winter training was okay. It was not particularly enjoyable. As you saw, the weather wasn't particularly nice. It was damp for most of it. But then the 2-week break really helped. Not only did I get a rest, but when I came back from that break, the weather seemed to change. It was completely different, much warmer, drier. It's enabled me to get out and do those much longer rides, those kind of stamina rides. And it's felt an awful lot better. With 2 weeks to go, I am where I should be, really, in terms of that training plan. So at the moment, I think I've done almost 1,900 miles, for 114,000 feet so far climbed. I can't quite remember what that target is, but I think the mileage is where it should be. I think I targeted 2,200 miles before or after the ride, round about that much, so I'm pretty much on target for that. Although things have changed in terms of the plan itself. There was one incident which took place over the weekend, a couple of weekends ago, when a planned ride down to Taming on a Saturday, which all went fine. We had a tailwind with us. We actually ended up going on to Pembroke, which is another 10 miles further on, because we couldn't get a hotel in Taming, and all that was fine. Because the weather had changed the day after, and it was going to be fine with a little bit of a tailwind coming back as well, I decided to cycle back rather than come in the car or the train. And I got as far as the first mountain after 70 miles and completely bonked. Ran out of energy completely. Obviously hadn't taken in enough calories from the previous day, and had burned up too many on that previous day without realising it, and completely bonked. And unfortunately, I was at the bottom of the hill rather than the top of it, and I had to take it easy on the way up, eat as much food as I could when I got up there, and then go to the first shop on the way down, and limp home, not going the hard way, just taking the easy route back home. And since then, I've been really careful with how I've trained, and the eating and the drinking, etc., and not overdoing it. So I have kind of relaxed it a little bit, but still, you know, there's been some really tough rides, as you've seen up in the Brecon Beacons there. So in terms of what happens now, there are 2 weeks left, as I say. This weekend the forecast looks good, and it's a bank holiday weekend. I will very likely go out on Monday for my last long ride. I'm looking to do between, I think, 120 and 140 miles up in the Brecon Beacons, up above Abergavenny. Hopefully around 10,000 feet of climbing on that particular ride. The most I've done so far is, on any one ride, is 9,000 feet, 9,300 I think it was last weekend up in the Beacons. And that'll be the last really long, hard, tough ride that I do in terms of training. The week following that, it'll just be a little bit of interval training, 1 or 2 commutes to work. The following weekend, a very pleasant, I hope, 60 to 80 miles, just to keep the legs turning, nothing too strenuous. And in the week leading up to the ride itself, it's likely to be just a few commutes to work, there and back again. It's 5 miles there, 5 miles back. nothing too strenuous. The last one of those at the latest will be on the Friday. The day before the ride will be the Saturday, of course, when I'll be making sure my bike's in good nick, cleaning it up, putting it in the car ready for the Sunday morning, and watch this space and let's see how I get on. There's one important factor that I haven't spoken about yet, and that's nutrition. It's 4 or 5 days to go until the ride itself. The forecast for the day is, touch wood, it's dry, but it's windy, and there's going to be a headwind for the last 70 miles or so while I head south from the top of the Devil's Staircase back down to Margam Park. So obviously I'm going to have to pace it right, I'm going to have to fuel it right on the day, and in the days leading up to the ride I'm going to have to eat well, and following the ride I'm going to have to make sure that I recover correctly with the food that I'm eating. Now, the way that I normally do that is I eat protein. I don't tend to enjoy the protein bars. They're a bit stodgy, difficult to digest, they're not particularly tasty. There are some very unusual or unheard of perhaps methods of getting protein into your body. This is one of them, for example. Just an ordinary packet of peanuts, not the salted variety, but in 100 grams of peanuts, and there's probably about 200 grams in this, you'll get 25 grams of protein, which is a good start. The humble sardine, in that tin there are around about 15 grams of protein, and if you're like me and you enjoy sardines, they're not too bad. Each egg, and you can have them scrambled, fried, poached, whatever, 6 grams per egg of protein. And one of the surprising factors is this particular item here. This is a Savers version, a Morrison Savers version of cottage cheese, and there's plenty of protein in cottage cheese, and it's not something that a lot of people know about. This is a 300 gram pack, and there's about 15 grams per 100 grams of protein in this particular pack. The thing you've got to watch with cottage cheese is that it can often be full of fat, and you would think that the Saver version would be a little full of fat, but it's not. It's actually less fat in this one than there is in their low fat version, which is bizarre, which is twice as much to buy. So that's protein for you. What I'll be doing in the days leading up to it, to the ride that is, of course, is eating plenty of carbohydrates. For example, lunch today, ham rolls. I aim to eat a meal of rice and chicken the night before I ride, plenty of that, and then on the morning of the ride it'll be my normal, which is usually toast and porridge, and then set off with a bunch of bars and make sure I've got gels, and then use the feed stations to just fuel up and make sure I don't run out of energy. So it's the morning of the ride, Sunday the 11th of June, the date I've been waiting for 6 months for. The weather at the moment is it's a little bit breezy, there's clouds going over, but it's mainly blue skies. Unfortunately that's not set to stay. A forecast I've just seen now, and the forecast that I showed you earlier has come to fruition. It's going to be very, very windy later, southwesterly wind, which means that the journey inwards back to Margam Park is going to be very tough. So I've taken the decision that it's very, very likely that I'm going to cut this short today, and do follow largely the Gran Fondo route, and try and do 150 miles if I can. I think it would be a little foolhardy to go up and do the Devil's Staircase today and risk getting back in pitch dark, and everybody having gone home. I'm thinking of it from a safety point of view rather than from a challenge point of view. I think that's a sensible approach. So I'm going to go off and do this now, and we'll see how I go. I'll speak to you later. Well, I can say with reasonable confidence that that was probably one of the most horrendous experiences I've ever been through. I carried out my plan to drop down a level to the Gran Fondo, and it was horrendous. No other word for it. Not too bad in the first part because of course you got the wind with you going north, but of course then you turn around, you face south, and you got the wind against you, unfortunately. And then you had to put up with the rain, the constant showers that we had. Also it absolutely battered down on the last climb of the day, which is the Black Mountain, which is a big climb. Takes you up to about 1,650 feet, I think. Rained most of the way up there, absolutely lashed it down, blowing a gale at the top there. Could hardly see anything, you're just completely surrounded by cloud. And my Garmin recorded a temperature of 8.9 degrees on top of the Black Mountain today, in June in Wales. Unbelievable. So probably the right idea to drop down the level. The Dragon Devil was, I mean, at the speed that I went at today, I was quite pleased at. I'm not sure of my average speed, but it's pretty good, and I probably could have done, in the time I took today to do the Grand Fondo, I probably could have got around the Dragon Devil, but the problem I would have had is that my legs are in bits. I've got a pain in my left knee, which I've never had before, and I've also got a pain behind my right knee, upper calf, right knee, and that's something that I have had before, but it was only at the beginning when I started training back in January. So it's almost like it's a recurring injury, and I'm not sure what this knee is all about, but it's very painful. So I'm glad I didn't do that, because that probably would have been suicide, to be honest with you. So that's it. A bit of a fail. It was a shame the weather conditions were so bad. It absolutely blew a gale out there today. It was, as I say, horrendous. It's the only word that I can think of that would describe it. That, folks, that's show business.